This is Speak of the Devils on AZFamily Sports.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier TV show for Sun Devil Athletics. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, we are back for our May special episode, and right now the Diamond Devils are heating up and couldn't come at a better time.
Yeah, things are moving along. We are entering the final week of the regular season and the final series in Big 12 play for ASU. There's a lot to discuss in that regard as the Sun Devils look to enter the postseason for the first time under Willie Bloomquist. There's been quite a bit of pressure on this team this year. And you know what? Sometimes there have been some highs and some lows, but they're looking to end things on a very high note.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, it just, most ASU fans on the broader timeline of history, just to see that ASU has not been in the postseason for a couple of years now would be unfathomable. But that is indeed the situation that this program found itself in. But as of right now, thanks to a 18-9 mark in conference play, they're lining up pretty well to break that postseason drought.
Yeah, so let's take a quick look at what is to come this weekend. ASU is going to travel to Oklahoma State for its final series of the regular season. Now, those Cowboys, it's an interesting story. They were picked in the preseason to finish first in the Big 12, but right now they're in 8th place. They're 12-12 in conference play, 24-22 overall. They have had 5 games canceled so far this season. I guess that's what happens in the state of Oklahoma. You're going to get some weather in the early springtime that's going to make it tough to play some baseball. Oklahoma State had won 6 in a row before it lost to Baylor last Sunday to close out that series. They're next to last in the Big 12 in team batting average and runs scored, but they're 4th in team home runs. They only have 1 player batting over 300. By comparison, ASU has 7, and OSU is 4th in the Big 12 in team ERA. So what we'll also do here is we're going to kind of break down some of the scenarios that are possible with the seeding for ASU entering the Big 12 tournament. That is going to go on next weekend in the home of the 2023 World Series champion, Texas Rangers, Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. So what can happen? You know, what do we need to keep an eye out for with this series this weekend at Oklahoma State? Now, ASU's already won the most games that it's won under Willie Bloomquist and the most wins by the program since 2019. But again, this weekend and next week have the potential to bring, even more success for ASU. The Sun Devils right now are in 2nd place behind West Virginia in terms of the Big 12 rankings. There are 4 other teams within range as well, so ASU simply cannot lay off the gas this weekend against the Cowboys. So just to kind of give you a few scenarios, if ASU happens to sweep all 3 games, they'll finish no worse than 2nd in the Big 12 for the regular season. They could possibly leapfrog West Virginia for 1st. There is a scenario where that's possible. Now then, if ASU were to win, say, 2 of the 3 games, I believe it's a lock they'll finish 2nd. They can't do any worse or better if my calculations are correct. Now then, where the chaos will reign is if ASU wins only 1 game of this series, or even worse, is swept, then there are a lot of possibilities that could happen there. A big thing to keep in mind is you want to be a team within those top 4 seeds because they will get a first-round bye in that Big 12 tournament. And keeping in mind, ASU hasn't finished better than 3rd in its conference since 2011 and hasn't won a conference championship since 2010. So there is quite a bit on the line. I know that some folks have looked at this season so far and seen those ups and downs and still maintain some criticism about this program. But all in all, if you really see the forest for the trees and take a broad view of what's going on, they have improved their win total. They're in a much better standing in terms of the conference rankings. And we'll see how this weekend goes. They could lock in that number 2 or even number 1 spot. Now, then it'll be a brief celebration, whatever it is, because you got to go out to Arlington, Texas, and put it all on the line next week in that Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, and it's going to be against an Oklahoma State team, as you mentioned, that came in with some hype, struggled a little bit, but ASU so far this year, I believe, is 9-8 on the road overall. So just anytime you're going on the road, especially with a new conference opponent, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But one of the areas that Joe that really kind of jumps out in terms of how this team has been able to improve and put themselves in a position to be among the best in this conference is the pitching. We all knew that this team was going to score a ton of runs, as you mentioned, with 7 hitters hitting over 300. But I think the pitching staff has made some gains. Jack Martinez and Ben Jacobs at the top of that rotation have been doing their due diligence there, and then also getting some good work out of the pen. How have you seen this pitching staff come together and help get the Sun Devils get in a position to be where they're at?
And like you mentioned, Martinez and Ben Jacobs been striking guys out left and right. Cole Carlone out of the bullpen has been absolute magic. A thing that I think is really going to help this pitching staff moving forward toward not just this weekend, but even potentially the Big 12 tournament. ASU has had quite a few mercy rule wins in recent weeks where you just go to the seventh inning. If you have more than 10, if you're up by more than 10, if it's either a midweek game or the final game of a weekend series, they'll call it at that point. And that, takes a lot of the pressure off the pitching staff. And if you're up by that many runs, you're probably digging deep into your bullpen as far as guys that aren't usually getting a lot of action. So there's been the opportunity for some rest in recent weeks, which I think could be pretty interesting. And that helps. It's been helpful in those blowout games, at least in my opinion, for ASU's pitchers, some of the younger guys or ones that typically don't get a lot of action, to see some time out there. When you go into a tournament setting, whether it's the conference tournament or into a regional or hopefully even beyond, you're going to have to throw guys out there maybe on short rest or just put them in situations that they may not typically be in, especially if you get down to that losers bracket. So I think that the recent weeks have brought some good training upon this pitching staff. Obviously the bullpen has had its woes. That's still, if you're looking at this season and thinking about kind of what is the major downside of this team, that's probably going to be it, because they're hitting all over the place. They're running all over the base paths. You got guys that are improving. We'll have to talk about the improvement of Isaiah Jackson at another time, because we don't have enough time left in this segment to really put the praise on him that he deserves. So the eyes are going to be on that pitching staff coming up, but there have been some bright spots that give you hope that they could, maybe make a real interesting run.
Yeah, Sun Devils are on the brink of a postseason berth. That's some welcome news for Maroon and Gold fans everywhere. So we'll see exactly how they're able to take care of the Cowboys this weekend. After the break, it's time for a Sun Devil Stock Report. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. It has been a little bit since we have done a Sun Devil Stock Report. Now that we are in the kind of the summer months, I think it's time for a nice little kind of potpourri a little bit to talk about several Sun Devil sports as we go. So those unfamiliar, I'm going to throw a Sun Devil stock Joe's way. He will either buy or sell, starting with ASU baseball needs to make a super regional in order for this year to be considered a success.
So that's a good question. And I would imagine there are probably a lot of people that might be on either side of the fence with that. I'm going to go ahead and sell that and just take it on a very logical basis and not an emotional one, because I think that folks that buy that are probably thinking more emotionally. ASU, there's really no conceivable situation where ASU is going to host a regional. And if you're hosting the regional, then that means that you're typically the favorite in that region to go to the super regional. So just kind of by that logic, ASU is not going to enter the postseason as a favorite to get to that level. Now, that's obviously like any tournament. Not all the favorites always advance. Now then, that can be a little bit of a sliding scale, because let's say, what if ASU goes and wins the Big 12 tournament, the Big 12 champions, and there's another party in the Dallas, Texas area, just like there was last fall with Sun Devil football. Then I think that can change the expectations, even if ASU doesn't host a regional in that circumstance. But I still think that to the postseason has to be that check mark of it's a successful season. Now, then, kind of like we've talked about in the past with like football seasons, maybe like to 2021. I was thinking about this earlier. Like that season, we called it a success, but only to the slightest degree. They barely, got over the hump of success. There could have been ways for it to be much more successful. So that if ASU just gets to the postseason and doesn't put forth much of a showing, it'd be a success, not a huge success. So right now, I don't think that the super regional or bust is the right mentality.
Buy or sell, keeping Bobby Healey rather than bite the financial bullet of hiring 2 new basketball coaches this cycle was the right move for ASU.
I think it was because obviously, you had to make the move with the women's program. That one had to be done. And the fact that ASU is, in a circumstance with Bobby Healey where there really is no further investment, we've talked about a little bit. It's going to be very interesting because this is about as lame duck a situation as I can remember for any major head coach for ASU, where it's basically now or never. That is what it is. So, for me, you could kind of go either way, but I think this one last season to see what he's got is okay, because again, they had to make the change with the women's program. Baseball seems to be on good footing because there are folks that are, wondering if Willie Bloomquist was coaching, for his stability this season. So all the variables put together, yeah, I think it makes sense.
All right, this next one will be good for sports bars and message boards. Buy or sell? If you had to make a declaration right now, ASU is a golf school.
I mean, if you're, I guess you got to buy, because especially not just present day or recent past. I mean, you go back decades, obviously, the Phil Mickelsons of the world that go back 30, 35 years. And there have been so many marquee names throughout that stretch, both on the men's and women's side. So again, if you're doing process of elimination and saying, okay, what else could they be? Of course, there have been many other sports that have had, peaks and things like that. But as far as consistency and elite level consistency, I don't know that there's any other sport that ASU excels the way that it does in golf. So yeah, I guess that you can call it that.
Buy or sell? As of right now, athletic director Graham Rossini deserves an A grade for his first year in the job.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? Actually, you know what? I'm going to sell it because he deserves an A+.
Oh, there we go.
Because, I mean, just the way that everything has transpired in all of the capacities of what his responsibilities are as athletic director, I just don't see how you can't give him the highest possible mark that you can give him. Obviously the football season and that success makes him look good, even though he wasn't necessarily the athletic director when Kenny Dillingham was hired. First and foremost, just his personality, his demeanor, his approach with fans and supporters of the program, coming on the heels of a athletic director that was very much the opposite direction in terms of, the approachability from the average Joes of the fan base. So that was a tremendous breath of fresh air. And he's someone that, as we know, you can take him at his word. You can believe what he says. You don't feel like it's lip service or just someone that's just kind of, trying to get you to support the team by any means necessary. And so that aspect, as far as like the PR component of it, that's a big deal. And now, as far as the hires are concerned, there haven't been that many, but you've got to be happy about the ones that have transpired, especially women's basketball with Molly Miller. There are a lot of reports about, creative NIL ideas that ASU has had. So I can't think of a much better outcome, for ASU to have had, especially in light of, some of the critiques and criticisms about him lacking experience in this role at the college level. So all things considered, it's not, though all the sports haven't been perfect and that sort of thing. I can't think of a realistic outcome that could have been much better. So yeah, for me, it's better than an A.
Buy or sell? This is currently on paper. Now, I should make that very clear. On paper, a better top to bottom football roster than 2024.
So this one is tough, and I think I have to sell it. Just because of the absence of that one key piece, but also a few key pieces. With as much as Cam Scatterbo meant to this program, it's tough at this point. That's the case. And then also guys like Shamari Simmons, obviously we're both tremendously high on him and the impact he had on this program. So it's kind of a wait and see approach, but we'll see. But I can't buy that quite yet.
All right, real quick on the last one, buy or sell? ASU fans will actually handle the preseason football expectations and hype well.
Ha! They're Sun Devil fans. I love them, but I am selling this. I'm giving it away for free. There's no way anybody is ready for the expectations that are going to be levied upon this program. It could be a little chaotic. Love them to death. Glad to be in this position, but no way anybody's ready for this.
After the break, we're going to be back talking about that Son of a Football roster as we wrap up spring practice. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Spring football practice is in the rear view mirror. The Sun Devils wrapped up their 15 sessions, and now it's kind of the long, dreary offseason until fall camp opens up in late July. But let's recap some of the big developments coming out of spring ball, Joe. Starting on the offensive side of things, no such drama like last year in terms of the three-man quarterback race. We know ASU has one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Sam Levitt, a very capable, experienced backup in Jeff Sims. So probably a good situation when your biggest question is who's going to be number 3.
Yeah, exactly. Sam Levitt really just taking those steps to become a nationally elite quarterback. Very underrated benefit to have a veteran quarterback as your number 2 in Jeff Sims. I'm a big advocate of ASU dipping into the transfer portal for a third quarterback. I don't know if that's going to happen. again, if you're getting to your third QB, no matter who it is, you got some troubles, and certainly hoping ASU doesn't get to that point. But you got to be ready with the depth, even if ASU doesn't make any moves there.
All right, so running back, though, of course, you're missing Cam Scadaboo, the heart and soul of last year's championship team. But the cupboard is far from bare. Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown, returning guys. They added Kanye Udo from Army, a guy with over 1,000 yards a season ago. Now, through the practices, I think Kyson and Raleek kind of separated themselves as of right now as the top two options. But I think Kanye, as he got more used to this pro-style offense coming off the triple option, he looked better and better as it went on. And, of course, when you got Sean Aguano leading that position group, you know you're going to get a productive backfield.
Yeah, going to be a really interesting fall camp with all those guys competing for time. Even though Scat is gone from the roster and it's impossible to replace a guy like that, don't expect ASU to take a massive dip in terms of how it runs the ball in their run game. We'll see maybe if they do more of a by committee type of approach. Kyson Brown could really be in line for a breakout season. There are a lot of folks that might be calling that shot right now.
Yeah, kind of a money ball thing where you can't necessarily replace him individually, but in the aggregate, chances are ASU is going to have a good run game. Now, moving on to the tight ends, this is a group that really jumped up, perhaps more than any on the offensive side of the ball. You're returning Shimon Mateer, who had all Big 12 honors a season ago, but you add Kamari Anderson from Kentucky, a 6'6", 240-pound specimen, and then the AJ Ia, the true freshman, looking every bit of that 6'6", 250. Just a trio of monsters and an experienced guy in Cam Harpole as well. That's a loaded group.
Yeah, AJ only takes 4 letters to spell his whole name, but you better remember them both because that dude's going to be making some plays for the Devils. But he might even be the third tight end. Shimon Mateer coming off a really solid season right there. Kamari Anderson, Brad, you've talked a lot about having high expectations for him based on what he's shown in the spring. This should be a position group that really, really is featured a lot and does some things. This is some depth. It's hard to think back to a time where ASU has had the depth at tight end that it has this year.
All right, so at wide receiver, we know ASU has one of the very best in the country in Jordan Tyson. He's now fully healthy. The question was, how do the ranks of the receiver room fill out after him? Now, they have a couple of guys that are returning, most notably Malik McLean, who ran with the number ones throughout spring, a big body target. But they brought in a trio of transfers in Jalen Moss, Jaron Hamilton, and Noble Johnson. And all three of them throughout the course of spring got better and looked good. But I think by the end, we saw Jalen Moss really establish himself at the slot, and Jaron Hamilton as potentially being a very exciting downfield threat, had a nice rapport and chemistry developing with Sam Levitt. So the Alabama transfer could be a guy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we're talking about the departures of Cam Scadaboo, Shamari Simmons on defense, don't underrate how huge the losses of Melquan Stovall and Xavier Guillory are. As we know, they came on so strong over the entire season, but especially that final stretch, especially when Jordan Tyson was out due to injury. So we'll see how those new additions add to the quality of this position group. And ASU also got a recent transfer from a 6'7" wide receiver. We'll see what he can do.
Yeah, and so closing things out on the offensive side with the offensive line, Ben Coleman moving to center. That's very interesting. There were some injuries throughout spring. Nothing major that's going to keep guys out in the fall, but there was some mixing and matching, and we'll get to. They're facing a pretty good defense, but the results in spring were a little bit mixed.
Yeah, you've got a lot of veterans coming back, but some injuries, some guys moving around. So that on the offense, certainly going to be the biggest question area out of the spring. Not to say that it's like a weak spot, but something to keep an eye on when you get closer to fall camp.
One thing that was great to see was offensive tackle Jalen Clem returning after suffering a stroke prior to last season. He looked good and got a lot of run with the first-team offense throughout spring. After the break, we are going to be taking a top-to-bottom look at the key developments from ASU's defense. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Let's take a look at the Sun Devil defense. And Joe, throughout the 15 spring practices, it really seemed, maybe perhaps not surprisingly, considering most of the unit was back, but the defense has really kind of had the upper hand on the offense. And with so much returning talent, it was kind of expected to see. But, starting things up front. Now, throughout the course of spring, there was a lot of kind of attrition with some minor injuries at the defensive tackle position. But, man, just the overall depth, especially inside, but also along the edges. When you're losing just one guy from last year's 3 deep, really, it was just great to see. And especially on the edges, the pass rushing ability, it's an area that we needed to see some improvement from last season, really kind of stood out.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of veteran talent talent there, a lot of depth, as you mentioned, a ton of returning players. So that continuity figures to take a big leap forward. The thing that I want to see pretty much from this team in general, like if I'd identify, one, maybe the top or top two areas that I'd like to see improved outside of place kicking, the pass rush is going to be right up at the top of that list. So it's good to see some progress in that regard this spring.
Of course, returners like Clayton Smith, Prince Dorbaugh, Elijah O'Neal, Justin Watley, top that trio along the edges. So we'll see if that can produce. We did see a lot more plays behind the line of scrimmage by the linebackers. And this is a lot of their second years. And Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott leading the starting unit there. Zyrus Fiaseu was another experienced guy as well. So you have a trio of very experienced linebackers now playing in their second system. And I really think that translated into faster play. Those guys felt more comfortable, more decisive in their actions. And really, I think both Elliott and Crook are in line for some huge seasons ahead.
Yeah, what we want to see is a full wall-to-wall season for these guys. Keyshawn Elliott started incredibly, leveled off a little bit as the season wore on. Fiaseu was a solid, reliable rotation guy. Crook had some injury issues, I believe, in the early part of the season, but man, he really impressed as things wore on. So this, even though you have the departure of Caleb McCullough, who really was a huge piece of this defense last year, should still be a very, very solid group with a lot of depth.
All right, so moving on to the cornerback position, the ASU is returning both of their starters, Keith Abney and Javen Robinson. Robinson had some nagging injuries throughout spring, but Abney really looked like he's leveling up. So a lot of the intrigue in spring, who's going to be that number 3 corner? It looked for a little bit like it would have been redshirt freshman Class Johnson. Unfortunately, he suffered a knee injury and is going to be out for the year. But youngster Rodney Bimage and transfer Nyland Green really picked up the slack. Bimage in particular looked outstanding throughout the course of the entire spring. Green, being a transfer, picked it up a little bit late as he became more comfortable in the defense. So ASU, even though they are going to be without Johnson for most of the year, is going to be looking, I think, pretty deep at the corner spot.
And that's a big piece that they have to replace. LT Welch was that third cornerback last year, figured to be again this year. He's dismissed from the team, ultimately transferred, I believe, to UNLV. But you've got some guys that can really play at or maybe even beyond the level that Welch brought last year. So you get those starters, another year under their belt, should be real solid, and get that third and fourth guys. That could be a real interesting combination at cornerback for ASU.
Now at safety, you have Xavier Alford and Ghost Rouser as your starters. You know you're going to be good and set there. They're a known commodity. The big question, who's going to replace Shamari Simmons at that nickel spot? Now, unfortunately, ASU had a transfer in Boogie Wilson coming over from Washington State that did not participate due to injury. He should be back for fall camp. But that left returner Montana Warren, who got some run throughout the season in a limited role, most notably in the game against Texas, versus another transfer in Kindrich Breedlove. Now, Warren ran with the ones throughout the course of spring, but I thought Breedlove especially played much better down the stretch, and that should be a real key battle, especially when Wilson's factored in.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys there competing for time, and they've even added in the secondary beyond spring practices in terms of transfer portal additions. So that is going to be one area to really, really watch as far as the position battle goes, one of the most significant ones on the entire team.
And Joe, happy to report ASU's got a good kicker.
Very, very happy about that. Jesus Gomez coming over from Eastern Michigan. He has the proof there. He's kicked multiple 50-plus yarders, 55-plus yarders during his college career. Someone that you can really expect to kick at near or at a all-conference caliber level. Truly believe, fingers crossed, that ASU has a reliable kicker for the first time, perhaps since Zane Gonzalez about 10 years ago. We shall see.
We shall see indeed. Make sure you stay with us on the podcast feed of your choice. We'll be dropping episodes all throughout the summer, and we'll be back on Arizona's Family Sports on Thursday, June 19th.